Good morning, friends and members of the UFLB. My name is Don West Jr., and I'm going to be your worship associate for this morning. Our fellowship is served by the Reverend Lee Marie Sanchez, and she's with us this morning, so that's always a pleasure. Reverend Lee Marie Sanchez is usually with us 1 weekend a month to deliver the message. She also usually worships with us when we're in person on an additional weekend every month. And luckily, because of the technology enabling powers of Zoom and this medium that we're connecting through, she's been with us so much more in this time period that is the COVID impacted time period of 2020. So good morning, Reverend Lee Marie. Thank you for being with us this morning. This morning during the virtual service, pre-virtual cafe that we have, she was so kind as to do a personal introduction between us and our speaker for today. And we're so lucky to have with us again, Michael Eselun. And did I say the name right? I hope so. Michael has been with us before. Luckily, the last time he was with us in person, I was lucky enough to also be the worship associate with him then as well. So welcome back, Michael. So glad to join us. Did I say your last name right? Is it Eselun?
Yes, you did. Great job. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. Welcome back. Michael is a dynamic and a very powerful speaker. As many of you pointed out in our virtual cafe, he's one of the favorites of those who come through the UUFLB. So it's my great pleasure to have him with us today. His stories help us wrap around the deeper questions of life. And today, the title of his talk is What Matters. So that's going to be very, very special. He's a two-time TEDx speaker. He's currently the chaplain for the Sims Mann UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. He's highly regarded. Carolyn pointed out that he has an amazing Facebook feed. His Facebook page charts his journeys. It's been interrupted a little bit because much of it is built around his travels, and we haven't been able to travel during COVID. But since he was in the building the last time with us, I followed him and seen some of the things that he's done. So I encourage you, if you interact in that place in Facebook, you should also follow him there because there's amazing stuff there as well. Here at the UUFLB, we subscribe to no single religious creed, but have gathered a set of principles that guide us as we build a religious community together. The 7 principles that Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote are on our website at www.uulagunabeach.org. So I encourage you to visit our website. Our fellowship president, Michael, and everyone else, just so in case you didn't know this, had made a major project out of redoing our website and was a driving force along with the collaboration of others, but really Peggy was a driving force in putting our website together and reworking our website, and it's very dynamic and it's amazing. So I encourage you to take a look. Now is the time in the portion where we are going to light our chalice. And if you have a chalice at home, I encourage you to join me in lighting it now. That's a beautiful picture of the chalice in our congregation. It's one of the favorite things to watch the flame flicker there. I am actually gonna admit that we usually have someone light the chalice, and I was defunct in performing the task of getting someone organized to light the chalice for this morning. So if you have a chalice at home, please light it with me. I'm gonna light the chalice here. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Everywhere UUs gather for worship, a chalice is lit. If you have a candle with you, go ahead and light yours. Our communities know no boundaries, and I see the flame as a symbol of that, because its light also knows no boundaries. And now we're going to move into our centering thought. and it's going to come up on the screen. And I don't know if Pam has her audio on, but when we were doing our dry run practice for this service, I became aware that I'm a young boy from Alabama who read a lot and never had a class where anybody ever said Johann Wolfgang von something's last name out loud. So I'm going to say Goethe, and then hopefully Pam or someone else will tell me the proper way to say that last name there. Is it Goethe?
Goethe.
Goethe.
Goethe? Goethe?
Goethe.
Goethe. Okay, so now this is a learning opportunity for Don West Jr. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe is going to deliver our centering thought. On the next slide, you can read it with me while I read it aloud. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. And he's highly regarded as one of the most dynamic thinkers of German descent in the modern era. And I determined after reading a little bit about him that was primarily because he had so many writings and things that were left behind. And as a legacy specialist, it seems very important because he left something that was generative and was able to be recounted and recollected. So I just thought that was a very powerful quote. And it lines up with the message that we're going to hear very shortly from Michael. Next, we're going to have one of the favorite parts of the service for me, which is the music of our musical director, the lovely and talented Carole. And it's going to be our opening hymn, number 1015, I Know I Can Go On. Take it away, Carole.
Thanks, Don. The days be dark with storms, burden away my heart. No troubles wait at every turn. I know I can go. Your sorrow heals my soul, and burdens make me strong. No troubles wait at every turn. I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near. The troubles wait at every turn. I know I can go on. So brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song. When hope waits at every turn, I know I can, I know I can, I know I can go on.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Carole. And now I invite everyone to unmute yourselves because we're going to have our unison affirmation. It's going to be coming up on the screen. So if you want to participate, please unmute yourself. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to give the gifts
of love and
service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Next, we're going to have a reading done for us, and that reading is going to be delivered by our guest speaker today, Michael Eselun.
This is an excerpt from the Los Angeles Times from March 11th, 2012. It was a reflection from Mike Nichols, the well-known American film and theater director, producer, actor, and comedian, as he was embarking on directing a revival of Death of a Salesman on Broadway with Philip Seymour Hoffman. It is Willie Loman's singular tragedy that he can't understand that true success, says Nichols, is simply the ability to change. Willie can't understand the joy of changing yourself even by a millimeter. Even if you get 5 millimeters of difference in your life, not bad, he says. His eyes behind stern, dark-rimmed glasses suddenly moisten. I don't like to talk about my kids, but their ability to learn and adjust and change moves me more than I can say. It's the one characteristic you want for them. Learn, do something else, change. In Death of a Salesman, the diamond shining in the dark, hard and rough, turns out to be death itself. While Nichols once said, get the world to revolve around you and you think you're never going to die, he says that he has no such illusions. Oh my God, if I know anything, I know I'm going to die. I never forget that. I know I'll be forgotten in a minute, and that's just fine with me. He tells the story of watching the film Elizabeth one night when he couldn't sleep. He was stunned by how good the Cate Blanchett movie was and how gutsy its heroine, Queen Elizabeth I. The next morning, over breakfast, he told Diane Sawyer, his wife, about the movie, how Elizabeth stood up to the Pope, killed all her enemies at the same time, just like in The Godfather, and was not only right, but right forever. And recalls Nichols, Diane said one of the greatest things she ever said to me, if forever matters. As Death of a Salesman points out, it is the love or damage that a spouse and parent leaves behind in the here and now that ultimately matters. Everything else is a delusion, says Nichols, and that's what I'd like on my tombstone, if forever matters.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You got me thinking already, and I have to come back and not ponder such a deep reading. So thank you, Michael. Namaste. At this point in our service, we're going to pause the recording, and we're going to pause the recording because it's the time that has passed and the things that have occurred since we were last together. I would like to share that today is October 4th, and October 4th happens to be the birthday of a great friend of mine. His name,
recognize, as Dawn was recognizing, both the joy of friendship and sorrow that Dawn was sharing, and also the joys and sorrows that we all carry within our hearts that are perhaps unspoken this morning, but still so much a part of our lives and our shared time here in our beloved fellowship at Laguna Beach. So at this point, what I would like to do is move us forward to our time of offertory. While this is a fellowship that shares joys and sorrows and community and supports each other with all of the many, many gifts that we share, we also support our fellowship, our community, and the world community through the giving which we provide through our offertory. So I will bring up now to the screen our offertory screen, which gives two options by which you may provide an offering to the fellowship during this time. Of course, we continue our mission and we continue to meet our fiscal obligations and to pay our expenses. So on the left-hand side, you will see the two ways in which you can provide your offering online, and you can also send a check to the fellowship building itself. And also, very importantly, in the invitation which you receive for the Sunday service each Sunday, this information is there as well, perhaps even easier to use because you can just click on the links if you choose to make your giving online. So we are very grateful for the fellowship and for all that everyone is able to provide through the offertory. I will now see, as we move into a time of meditation, whether Don has rejoined us, but I do not see him on. And so I think what I would like to do is move us into the time of meditation and invite all to.
I can jump in there if you like with the meditation.
That would be lovely, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I invite us to just close our eyes right now and get comfortable in our seats as we move into this time of silent reflection and contemplation. As we breathe a few nice deep breaths together, we quiet our minds. We let go of the concerns of the day, the week behind us, and the week ahead of us. And we simply follow the empty breath. We come to this image of this place within us, perhaps, this part of us which just may be indestructible. Whatever that place, that essence is, we don't need to give it words. We simply breathe into it, that core of our being. From that place, we move into silence in community. Good morning. In this time of the pandemic, all of us are deluged, it seems, with dozens of unanswerable questions, each one competing for our limited attention and capacity to focus. How long is this going to last? How are we going to make it financially? How do we keep ourselves safe and healthy? How do we come to peace with this kind of uncertainty? As we vacillate between one question or another, whichever happens to be working us over at any particular moment, there might in fact be one question that lies beneath all the others. What matters? As you know, I serve as the oncology chaplain at the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. And last fall, I was honored to have been invited on behalf of the UCLA Department of Arts and Architecture to be a presenter at their special 10 Questions event, the Centennial Edition. It was a series of 10 evenings, each one devoted to one particular question for our life and times, each one explored by a multidisciplinary panel. When I told my husband, Scott, about this honor of having been invited, he, of course, asked me, "What's your question?" "What matters?" I said. "Oh, everything and nothing," he said, and then he left the room. Pithy, yes, but also kind of true in a way. Everything matters and nothing matters. Our own individual lives, such as they are in this very moment, are in fact a culmination of countless choices and decisions we have made, both large and small, over the course of our lives, and each one has been framed and shaped by our sense of what matters. Do I marry this person or not? Do I live in this city or not? Do I pursue this career or not? Or on a whole other scale, do I buy this new pair of shoes or save my money? Do I eat that piece of chocolate cake or let it pass me by? Each choice is a reflection of our idea of what mattered in that very moment. On a national scale, we only have to look 1 year ago to our national Democratic presidential primary debates to get a cross-section of what matters. Remember that? Day one of my presidency will be addressing healthcare reform. No, for me, it's addressing climate change. No, for me, it's cleaning up the corruption in Washington or the catastrophe that's happening at our southern border. And it all matters. But in the span of very few months, look at what has happened. All of that has been trumped, you should pardon the expression, by the COVID-19 pandemic. Does that mean all that doesn't matter anymore? Of course not. It just means that this matters more right now. And yet, on a whole other scale, do you know what else matters? That you get home safely from your next outing to the supermarket, that we have enough cat food, that Rupert has been fed, or that I have milk for my oatmeal tomorrow morning. I think what matters ultimately is this very moment, the thing right in front of us. I remember in the early 80s reading a magazine interview with Rosalind Carter. This would have been not long after she and Jimmy had moved back to their home in Plains, Georgia, from the White House. At the time of the interview, I remember she was busily engaged in laying a new brick pathway up to the front stoop of their house. She commented to the interviewer about how astonishing it was to reflect that very few months ago, she and Jimmy had been living in the White House, hosting state dinners, Camp David Peace Accord, all of that. And now the most important thing in the world is that this brick is straight. And it matters, she said. Though I was such a young man, I was so struck by the profundity of that. So much so that it still sticks with me 40 years later. It's kind of Zen-like, isn't it? Around the same time, I remember taking some kind of self-development seminar or another, after all, it was the 80s, in which we were given the task of writing our own epitaph. Now, if you've never tried that task, it can be quite daunting, but also illuminating. It becomes even more daunting when we have to do it for real. My mom died a year ago last April. You know, there's only so much room on those little bronze plaques. Which few words are you going to choose to summarize, to encapsulate an entire human life? What I came up with for myself in my early 20s was, he was moved by life. I think what matters is really quite fluid and changeable over the course of a lifetime, maybe even over the course of an afternoon. What mattered to me at 25 is not what mattered to me at 45, which bears little resemblance to what matters to me today at 65. I think in the first half of life, we're so consumed and preoccupied with accomplishing our goals, achieving something, perhaps starting a family, success, as if we have the vaguest idea what that really means. Second half of life, I find, is a different story. And yet one inescapable truth for all but precious few of us is that a couple of generations from now, no one will know or care or remember that you even walked the earth. So given that reality, what matters? I have to come back to Rosalind Carter, that the bricks are straight. And yes, while I'm focusing on this brick right in front of me, I have to be mindful and attuned to all of the overwhelming problems that plague our world. But when it comes time for me to take my very last breath, what will I say matters then? In my role as an oncology chaplain, I would say I'm sort of in the coming out business. I'm creating a safe space for people to come out to me, to tell me their truth, often their deepest truth, and often at the most critical time of their lives, at the end of it. But the way I see it, it's not only a coming out business, it's also a meaning-making business. Because once that truth is out there on the table, how are we going to contain it? How do we hold it? How do we make sense of it? That's part of the gift and exhilaration of getting to do this work every day. I get that constant reminder, Michael, pay attention, particularly as I move well into the third act of my life. When I reflect back on Acts 1 and 2, I realize how seldom it was that I was ever focused on the brick in front of me. I always had my eye around the corner to the next choice, the next decision. How does this one affect that one to get me closer to wherever it is I think I want to go? Which class do I take? What do I major in? Which career do I pursue? Which relationships do I nurture and pursue to get me closer to wherever it is that I think I want to go that will make me happy? And of course, that's still kind of true in a way, but perhaps with less urgency. Then again, maybe with even more urgency, because at this stage of my life, the big what's next for me now is the home stretch, the final reckoning. So when it comes time for me to take my last breath, what will I say matters then? Of course, there are as many answers to that question as there are individuals on the planet. And yet I do hear some common themes from folks who are wrestling with that very question. When faced with a choice, signing up for guaranteed more suffering with the next chemo, the next drug trial, the next radiation or surgery, what is it that makes my life worth fighting for? Going through that for this? Well, I'd like to live long enough to see my son graduate high school or college. I'd like to live long enough to see my daughter get married, to see my grandchildren be born. Still, I find those to be deceptively simple and tidy answers, seldom revealing the whole story. Many, many years ago, I worked on the inpatient bone marrow transplant unit at UCLA, leukemia and lymphoma patients mostly, who often spent many weeks, if not months, in the hospital. And there I met Leon, who was a difficult, prickly guy, not at all likable. In all of his weeks in the hospital, I never saw that he had a single visitor. And he was sort of proud of that, actually. I don't need anybody, he would say with some pride. He had his own business and he had a dog who scared the neighbors. Leon identified as an atheist, a secular Jew. He presumed I was religious and a Christian, neither of which were true, but he used to enjoy duking it out with me, philosophically speaking. That was the nature of my spiritual care. We would engage in these deep theological discussions. Once he did get his bone marrow transplant, however, things went south very quickly. And the docs came in with that awful news, nothing more we can do. Well, then his heart began to soften and the tears came. But the very next day, the docs came in and said, wait, Leon, we think you might qualify for this brand new drug trial coming down the pike. Oh my God, his spirits went through the roof, mine too. Leon, this is great news. Tell me, what are you gonna do with more time if you get it? I eagerly wanted to know. Here was the very nexus, what matters? I'd like to finish my invoicing, he said. My heart just sank. In total judgment, I admit, I was not a good chaplain in that moment. I did not ask the next obvious question. Oh, really? Well, tell me, that's interesting. Why are your invoices so important to you? No, I just sat there in kind of a stunned silence and judgment, really. I guess I was hoping he would say, I'd like to walk my dog on the beach one more time. I'd like to see one more beautiful sunset. You know, I'd like to hear Rhapsody in Blue one more time. No, I'd like to finish my invoicing. That's where he found his meaning. That's what mattered. Marianne was in her mid-40s and had lived the previous several years with pancreatic cancer. And I walked the last few months of her journey by her side. Not long before she died, I went to see her in the hospital. She was hooked up to every kind of tube and pump and hose imaginable. She was absolutely fried, just cooked. Michael, I'm done. This is it. I can't take anymore. I'm ready to go. But it wasn't an option. You see, her husband and her kids, of course, wanted her to keep fighting, try the next drug trial, have the next surgery. Let's get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fifth opinion. I can't die, she said, having my family think for the rest of their lives that I didn't love them enough to keep fighting. Do you think that's what they're going to think of me? Well, what do you want, Marianne? If you could call the shots right now, what would you want? That's easy, she said. I would disconnect all of this. I'd ask my husband to get in bed with me and hold me and look out that window across the room at that tree across the street and say, look at that tree. Look at how those leaves catch the sunlight and flutter in the breeze. Isn't that beautiful? A God moment, she would call it. Over our months of conversation, she had told me about other God moments, moments in which not much really happened, moments in which the stuff and business of life just kind of fell away, but moments in which she was sort of anchored back into life. There was room and space and awareness for this moment as it is, being enough and being beautiful. I'd like one more God moment, she said. I met Evelyn on her first day of chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. She'd been newly diagnosed. She came to see me regularly over the next 6 years, every couple of weeks, though she never wanted to talk about anything of any more consequence, it seemed, than what she and her husband, Gene, had done the previous weekend. Despite all my invitation, holding the door open to talk about the other deeper themes that are coming down the pike, she never took the bait. I didn't feel like I was doing much of anything but being a friend. But she would conclude each of our visits, oh, thank you, Michael. I always feel so much better just after talking to you. I went to see her in the hospital the day before she died. Her husband, Gene, was there, of course. They had been married just forever. No kids, though, childhood sweethearts. The Buddhists believe it's a good idea when one is about to make their transition, that one be reflecting on the sweet memories of life, that somehow it might grease the wheels for the next incarnation. No matter what our beliefs are about such things, it's not a bad idea. So I asked Gene, tell me that story again about how you guys met. I love that story. And he launched into the story, and soon enough, Evelyn was getting a little distressed. She didn't remember. Undaunted, Gene pressed on. Oh, sure you do, honey. Remember we went to that football game and we were in the back seat of that car, and no, now she was really getting upset because the memory was gone forever. Gene changed course and said, that's okay, honey. Maybe you're just tired. Tell you what, Michael and I will go out in the hall and we'll chat a little bit, give you a chance to rest. How about that? No, she said defiantly. I'm not tired. I don't want to rest. I want you both here. I just don't want anybody to talk. And so I sat on one edge of the bed and Gene sat on the other edge of the bed, and we each held a hand. And we just sat there in silence, looking at one another. Absolutely nothing to say, nothing to do, just love. For the rest of my life, that scene has imprinted my heart with what truly sacred space looks like. Perhaps what matters most is what's left when everything that we thought had mattered is burned away. So what matters to me today, in this moment? This conversation matters. Kindness really matters. Friendship, love, of course, humor. Being a witness to one another in our lives as they are, that matters. Kinship, communion. It's an old-fashioned religious word, but I love it. Taking in and digesting our common humanity, the thing that connects us to each other and to nature and to the source of life itself, that matters. Sure, I'd like to think that when I'm taking my last breath, I'll be reflecting that I did a good job, that I relieved some suffering, I provided some encouragement here and there, that I had a blast, that I saw the world, that I loved hard, but I'm not so delusional as to think it was ever anything more than one conversation at a time, one brick at a time. We go through our lives having countless encounters with others, little conversations here and there, a little encouragement here, a little inspiration there. Those might, in fact, have the greatest impact of anything we ever do. They might, in fact, be our greatest legacy. Joseph Campbell says he believes it's important for us to realize the eternal within, to participate with joy in the sorrows of the world. I come back to that again and again as a kind of mantra, to participate with joy in the sorrows of the world. I don't know. It may just come down to being moved by life. So be it.
I was moved to change the song I was going to sing after listening to Michael. So this song is called This Is the Moment. This is the moment. This is the day when I send all my doubts and demons on their way. Every endeavor I have made ever are coming into play. Here and now, today. This is the moment. This is the time when all the momentum and the moment are in right. In this moment, these precious chance, I'll gather up my past and make some sense at last. This is the moment when all I've done, all of the dreaming, scheming and screaming, become one. This is the day. See it sparkle and shine. When all I've lived for becomes mine.
When we take the fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world, carrying it together with us in our hearts until we are together again.
I invite you to perhaps close your eyes and take a few nice deep breaths with me. Breathing in the love, the intention, the commitment of this community to come together and to connect despite all that there is to separate us physically. As we exhale, can we release the light and the radiance of our coming together, not only back to one another, but to the larger circles of life? Let's even stretch our arms out right now where you are sitting and imagine our embrace of each other and those larger circles of life, getting a sense of our connectedness in a place beyond time and space, despite the physical isolation of this moment. As we breathe into that embrace, let's absorb the words of the poet Rilke as a blessing to ourselves. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart. Try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given to you because you would not be able to live them. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. The worship is ended, but our service begins. So be it.
Please sing along. Let there